Starmer is writhing in agony as the lies of the Labour Party are exposed. But what's worse is that his own party is turning its back on him, leaving this dictatorial Prime Minister with nowhere to hide. Keir Starmer's latest move has raised eyebrows across the political world, with many now seeing it as the final nail in the coffin of Starmer's career. What you'll see in this video is a disaster you won't be able to look away from. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The Labour Party has just made a highly controversial decision to spend £200,000 on hiring an EU negotiator with the aim of improving UK-EU relations. This move has immediately sparked fierce criticism from Conservatives. Priti Patel didn't hesitate to label it an act of sabotage against Brexit, a claim that is far from unfounded. If Brexit is complete, why does the UK need such an expensive EU negotiator? This becomes even more suspicious when you consider that the EU is pressuring the UK to take in 30,000 asylum seekers a year, roughly the population of a small town. The long-term consequences of this move cannot be ignored. Starmer's attitude shows that he prioritises the relationship with the EU over national interests. Many believe he is secretly trying to reverse Brexit, with more and more evidence emerging to support this. A Labour government willing to squander money on EU negotiations, accept pressure from Brussels on immigration, and be led by a leader seen as closer to Europe than to his own country paints a bleak picture. The contrast between Starmer's campaign promises and the reality of his leadership couldn't be clearer. He once pledged to respect the referendum result and complete Brexit, but what is unfolding now shows the opposite. Hiring the EU negotiator is just the tip of the iceberg. This move signals that the Labour Party cannot be trusted to protect Brexit. What they are doing seems like a slow strategy to cancel Brexit, hoping the public won't notice. In reality, more and more people are growing disillusioned. The betrayal of Brexit is just the beginning of a series of controversial decisions from Starmer. His £40 billion tax hike plan is another prime example. The Labour Party's promise not to raise taxes has now vanished into thin air. This tax package isn't just about the £40 billion, it's a direct blow to the people. A significant portion, £25 billion, comes from raising national insurance contributions for employers. This will not only impact large corporations, but also have a severe effect on the entire economy. When businesses are financially pressured, the inevitable consequence is job cuts and wage reductions. The Bank of England has warned of the belt-tightening many businesses will face, pushing workers into a difficult position. According to Bloomberg Economics, this Labour tax policy could result in around 130,000 jobs disappearing across various sectors. These aren't just numbers, they represent 130,000 families facing unemployment, all because the Labour Party keeps trying to drain the pockets of the public. On top of this, inflation is becoming another serious threat. The Bank of England has warned that the new tax policy could push inflation from 1.7% today to 3% next year. This means every cost, from everyday food to utility bills, will skyrocket. People will be under double pressure, facing heavy taxes while struggling with rising living costs. And the most worrying part is that these negative consequences seem to be just the beginning. Paul Dale, chief economist at Capital Economics, has issued a sharp warning that the UK government's borrowing costs are rising rapidly, signalling the likelihood of new taxes and widespread spending cuts. This view is reinforced by the blunt statement of John Roberts, CEO of AO, who didn't hesitate to criticise that the current budget is neither creating jobs nor fostering economic growth. He also expressed concerns that the government is completely struggling to manage the nation's finances. The real impact goes beyond workers losing part of their income through taxes. It is also clearly reflected in the risk of mass unemployment, widespread shop closures, and rising prices while wages remain stagnant. This situation is leaving many people feeling helpless, as all their hard work seems in vain. Some economists even predict that the current £40 billion tax hike is just the beginning, marking the start of further financial burdens to come. What's more concerning is that the Labour Party, which is being criticised, is relentlessly seeking to extract more money from the pockets of the public without any sign of stopping. Ironically, From a country that once witnessed people leaving in droves, the UK has now become an attractive destination for millions of immigrants. In the year ending June 2023, the number of immigrants reached a record high of 1.3 million, a figure that is causing public alarm. In fact, the Office for National Statistics had to revise the net migration figure up to 906,000, exceeding the initial forecast by 166,000. This flood of immigrants is not just about dry statistics. It is an undeniable strain on an already overburdened infrastructure, from housing and healthcare to education and rapidly changing communities. The points-based system set up by the Conservative Party after Brexit with promises of fairness is now being criticised for being too lenient. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have failed to offer any viable solutions. Vague statements about significant reductions in legal immigration have not been made concrete, leading to growing public scepticism that the party is quietly championing an open-door policy. The consequences of this wave of immigration are not just the pressure on local communities, but also the destabilisation of public services and the economy. Worse still, tensions between the Labour Party and the business community are escalating. Stuart Rose, former CEO of Asda, bluntly criticised the Labour Party for lacking practical knowledge of how businesses operate, particularly regarding plans to increase national insurance and the minimum wage. Rose warned that these policies would push consumer prices higher, even as inflation begins to cool. This is not just a personal opinion. A joint letter from 81 retail industry leaders has also raised alarms about the risk of job losses and a wave of shop closures. John Roberts, with his extensive business experience, could not hide his disappointment when analysing the Labour Party's budget. He questioned their real ability to create jobs and boost economic growth. This is no longer just an issue for businesses. It has spread and is directly affecting people's pockets through rising prices and increasingly limited job opportunities. Adding to the concerns, Labour's foreign policy is facing intense criticism. The decision to hand sovereignty of the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius, despite the strategic importance of Diego Garcia, a key military base for both the UK and the US in the Indian Ocean, has sparked heated debate. While Starmer tried to assure that the agreement would guarantee the base's security for 99 years, Mauritius expressed caution, questioning the long-term viability of this decision. The pressing issues ranging from the economy, immigration to sovereignty are exposing the incompetence and blind priorities of the Labour Party under Starmer's leadership. The unstable future they are painting not only leaves the public disappointed, but also serves as a warning for the challenging times ahead for the UK. Diego Garcia is considered an irreplaceable strategic pillar, playing a key role in supporting the UK and the US to project military power on a vast scale. From the battlefield in Afghanistan to Iraq, this base has proved vital for national defence interests. However, Keir Starmer's decision to return control of this area has ignited a wave of outrage. Marco Rubio, a well-known tough-talking US senator, has bluntly labelled the agreement as a serious threat to US national security, warning that giving up Diego Garcia would significantly diminish Washington's strategic position in the region. Meanwhile, the UK government rushed to complete the legal formalities before the potential re-election of Donald Trump, raising doubts about the true motives behind this controversial plan. Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, strongly opposed the move, calling the legal basis for giving up Diego Garcia unfounded and emphasising that this step serves neither UK nor US interests. Boris Johnson also spoke out, warning that this action was akin to self-harm, pointing out the serious consequences for the country's military interests. This hasty deal not only alienates allies, but also risks the UK losing its strategic position in the region. Ultimately, this move seems to be driven by Starmer's desire to flaunt himself as a global citizen, regardless of the price to national security and interests. The domestic policies of the Labour Party under Starmer's leadership are equally enraging the public. A prime example is the cut to winter fuel allowances for 10 million elderly people, a crucial £300 grant to help them cope with the cold. This policy not only pushes 100,000 pensioners into poverty, but forces them to choose between heating and eating. The public and trade union outrage was inevitable. Unite, one of the largest unions, is suing the government for breaching the law by not consulting the Social Security Advisory Committee and ignoring the negative impacts on disabled people. Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite, condemned the decision as wrong on every level and criticised the government for failing to conduct a proper impact assessment. The anger from the elderly is entirely understandable. These are people who have dedicated their lives, contributed to the tax system, only to be abandoned by a government that has broken its promises and betrayed their trust. The reduction in benefits not only erodes confidence, but also exposes the government's indifference towards the most vulnerable groups in society. The pension policy failure is just a part of a larger picture of Labour's loose economic management. In October, the government borrowed an additional £17.4 billion, the second highest borrowing figure for this month since 1993, with more than £9.1 billion spent on paying national debt interest. This record high interest payment places an additional burden on the public. The UK's national debt now stands at £2.8 trillion, roughly equivalent to the entire annual economic output. Meanwhile, the government continues to trumpet slogans of investment and growth, despite warnings from experts that their reckless borrowing strategy could push the country into recession by 2025. The Bank of England has not hesitated to criticise Labour's economic policies, particularly the £25 billion national insurance increase for employers, which not only drives up costs, but also raises the risk of unemployment. In this context, the public is forced to witness their taxes being used to pay debt interest rather than improve public services. These risky financial decisions are like a ticking time bomb, with the threat of recession looming large. An economic disaster is on the horizon, and it is the public who will bear the consequences of the mistakes made by Starmer's government. Keir Starmer once appeared before the public with grand declarations promising a new era for the UK. He pledged to redefine transparency and accountability in politics, winning the trust of many who hoped for change. But now, those promises are nothing more than faded memories, overshadowed by contradictory actions and growing public discontent. In just a short time since the Labour Party took power, the UK has descended into unprecedented chaos, with the public's outrage rising uncontrollably. Over 2 million people have signed a petition calling for a new election, a number that is not only significant, but also highlights widespread discontent. This is not just the voice of a small, disillusioned group of voters, but represents a large section of society where trust in the Labour Party has been severely shaken. This massive figure has forced Keir Starmer and his cabinet to take notice, no matter how hard they try to cover up their ineffectiveness. The Labour Party entered the political stage with a platform of reform, promising to clean up the political system and steer the UK back on a path of trust and openness. However, everything that followed has been nothing short of disappointing. In media appearances, Keir Starmer has acted more like a clumsy actor on stage, displaying a lack of preparation and total passivity when faced with tough questions. Body language experts have even pointed out clear signs of a leader who is out of control: a sharp increase in blinking, a nervous gaze, and difficulty answering questions about public trust. These signs not only indicate Starmer's personal unease, but also reflect the overall chaos within the Labour government. The disconnect, failure to communicate effectively, and inability to address voter concerns or keep promises have caused them to drift further away from those who once trusted them. The 2 million signatures calling for a new election are the clearest warning yet. They reflect the reality that many people feel betrayed by the current government, not only in terms of policy but also in leadership. This widespread disappointment has led the public to question: are the nation's current troubles simply a result of poor management, or is there a hidden agenda at play serving undisclosed objectives? Recent revelations have only deepened this suspicion. For instance, the appointment of an EU negotiator at a cost of £200,000 is a significant sign. It's just one piece of a larger puzzle, suggesting that Starmer's government may be quietly steering the UK back towards the EU. What's concerning is that all of this is being done silently, without clear public declarations. Priti Patel, one of the strongest critics, has not hesitated to warn that Starmer and the Labour Party are deliberately undermining Brexit and the hard-won independence of the UK. Moves such as discussions on immigration policy or free movement seem to hint at efforts to reverse Brexit, but they are being carried out quietly and strategically. This is not only a betrayal of the values the UK fought to protect, but also a risky move for the nation's sovereignty. Meanwhile, the economic situation under Labour's leadership is increasingly bleak. The policies of mass borrowing, unchecked tax hikes, and a dismissive attitude towards businesses have had serious consequences. Many are beginning to wonder whether these difficulties are merely the result of poor management, or if they are part of a larger strategy to make the public believe life within the European Union would be better. This could be the way the Starmer government is preparing the public for a bigger plan, rejoining the EU. EU officials, seemingly unashamed, have already suggested future UK-EU relations. Starmer's proposed youth mobility programme is seen as the first step, paving the way for deeper negotiations. These moves, according to many experts, appear to outline a quiet but steady roadmap for the UK's return to the EU. All current political and economic analysis leads to a troubling conclusion. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, the UK is not only at risk of losing its independent position, but is also on the brink of full-blown instability,